Chris Bell, Democratic candidate for Texas governor. Thank you so much and welcome to Eye on Politics.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So why are you running? And this is the second time you've run, 20 years after you were the Democratic nominee for governor. So why are you running and what is the essence of your campaign?
I'm running because I feel like Texas is headed in the wrong direction and has been for some time, and I've paid very close attention to the last legislative session. Education has always probably been the #1 issue for me, and improving public schools. And I've also have spent a lot of time studying choice within the school system. And I'm a big backer of public choice, meaning being able to move your child from a non-performing school to a higher performing school within the public school district. But trying to get kids out of public school and move them over to private school, I think, is a step in the wrong direction, and I think it will continue moving in that direction. It worries me greatly that some of the people backing that have said publicly that they would like to see Texas become a theocracy at some point. And I really think that Greg Abbott has worn out his welcome. His approval rating is lower than it's ever been, down to 39% as we sit here today, with a 50% disapproval, and an unprecedented fourth term. And I just don't think people are going to want him to stay in the governor's mansion. And more and more I thought about it, and obviously I thought about it for a long time. I decided timing's everything, and I really do believe this is my time.
And before you go through a general election, you have to win the primary. So why do you think you are the best Democrat in this race? Why should people select you over the other two Democrats?
Well, first and foremost, I think Democrats should elect someone in the primary that can beat Greg Abbott, and I think I'm that individual.
Why?
My political makeup, I'm moderate, center-left, socially progressive, fiscally conservative, and I think that's exactly the type of candidate that the people of Texas are looking for. I think there are a lot of disaffected Republicans right now, certainly a lot of independents, that want an alternative that they'll feel comfortable with. And I think that's been the big mistake of the Democratic Party in recent years, not really offering those disaffected Republicans and independents a better place to turn. The Democratic Party just kept going further and further left, and at a time when I felt like they should moderate. And so if you look at the lineup, it's a good lineup, and I know the folks, and there's certainly nothing personal about it. I just think because of the kind of campaign I'm going to run, because of my record, and because of the ideas I'll be putting on the table, that's what will attract the most support.
And what do you think is your path to victory, in the sense that, and why do you think that it will be different this time than 20 years ago? And I know 20 years ago you were the Democratic nominee, but it was a four-way race with then Governor Rick Perry, and then you had Carol Strayhorn, and also the Texas.
Let's just call it what it was,
yeah.
Jack, a very, very strange lineup.
Yeah, I mean, you had four people.
I used to tell people I thought I'd run away and join the circus. It was just very interesting. So it is very different, and so much has changed, and so much life has occurred. I've lived through 3 floods at my home in Houston, so having been a victim of a disaster like that, you learn a lot. You have a lot of empathy when you see those types of things happen. And so the experience factor has really increased, if anything. And I think I'm even in a better position. I was very excited in 2006, and I thought I would have been a great governor then, but I think I'll be even greater now based on the experience I've had. And I think it's because also where people find themselves. Corruption is something that every study shows that people are upset about, not just on the national level, but also on the state level. And when Texans see Rick Perry handing out no bid contracts to folks who have contributed.
You meant Governor Abbott.
Governor Abbott,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, taking, hundreds of thousands of dollars from contributors and then rewarding them with no bid contracts, that sort of thing. When you hear that this whole voucher bill was driven by billionaires who have been the strong proponents of it, there is this pay-to-play culture that's been around for a long time, but it's really gotten out of control. And I think people see that, and they're going to want somebody who's stood up to that kind of corruption and those types of ethics violations. And if you look at my record, I chair the ethics committee on the Houston City Council. We made sweeping reforms. When I went to Congress, I broke the ethics truce to file a complaint against Tom DeLay, who I really believe was the most corrupt politician in America at that time. So I don't just have to talk about it. When I've seen things that are wrong, I'll take action, and I'm not afraid to fight.
And one other political question before I get into your priorities, and that is, you talked about how the party has moved left, you want to keep it center. How do you see this primary shaping up as far as where you are compared to Andrew White, compared to Gina Hinojosa?
Well, Andrew has said that he's running as an independent. And
independent Democrat.
That's not what I've heard. Independent in the Democratic primary is how he made the announcement. And I don't think that's really what Democrats, and a lot of Democrats still vote in the Democratic primary, and they want someone who really aligns with a lot of the issues. You don't have to agree on every issue, obviously, and I think Gina Hinojosa is probably further left than I am on a lot of issues, and I'm sure there's some issues on which we all agree. But as far as, and I don't think anyone who isn't a moderate is going to be able to win statewide, especially in the general election. I believe people will be conscious of that.
So let's talk about your priorities. You talked a little bit about education, but what are your top priorities if you are elected?
Education, corruption, affordability, but along with affordability, livability and opportunity. It bothers me greatly that we have the 8th largest economy in the world, state of Texas, not just in the country, but in the entire world. And to have a state that rich and be the most financially distressed state in the entire country, in a lot of ways, is unforgivable.
And talk to me about what you mean by that.
Well, it means the number of personal and commercial bankruptcies. It means the number of uninsured. Of course, we have more uninsured individuals than any other state. And to a certain degree, Texas is becoming sort of a battle between the haves and have-nots. And Texans have always been about lifting other people up and providing opportunity. And I think a lot of that can be accomplished through the education system and some other initiatives I'll be introducing during the campaign. But I think we are going to have to address those concerns and create a better life for those who are really struggling.
Aside from education, what ideas do you think you have on that to try to achieve what you just said?
Well, one of the ideas I won't be rolling out until later, but when you look at what's going on with education, we moved away, years ago from vocational education, and it still exists to some degree, but not to near the degree that I believe that it should. Personally, I believe that when a young person leaves high school, they should be one of two things, either ready to go to college or ready to go to work. And because of union apprenticeship programs and other types of internship programs, a lot of that training could be achieved in high school, where those folks could get out of school and qualify for jobs in the trades that are really very well-paying jobs and can lead to a very comfortable lifestyle. And those are the types of initiatives that I would certainly champion, because we've learned not everyone wants to go to college or needs to go to college or is in a position to go to college. Certainly we need to continue to prepare young people who want to go in that direction, but there needs to be an alternative route as well.
You talked about your opposition to the school choice, the model that was passed by the Texas legislature, taxpayer-funded savings accounts for students to go to private school. If you are a governor, would you seek to undo that?
I would certainly try. But I'm also quite aware that I will most likely be dealing with a Republican legislature. And another reason I think people should take a very strong look at my candidacy, I've always demonstrated an ability to work with the other side. So you pick your battles, obviously. But on the education front, I also think I'll be putting some ideas forth that we can all agree on. We're seeing progress in a lot of private schools that are taking full advantage of AI. And I think Texas needs to take a very close look at that. Certainly where it's succeeding and where you're seeing these extraordinary test scores. And let's face it, it's time for Texas schools to modernize. We have used an antiquated model for a very long time, and we need to take a look at that and say, what still makes sense and what doesn't? And what doesn't still make sense, let's be willing to change.
Are you talking about curriculum? What are you talking about?
Some of it's curriculum, some of it's the way young people learn in this day and age, some of it is how long they need to go to school. All these things really need to be debated. I'm not saying do away with summer recess, but the reason we had that 3-month break was because back when that was developed, young people had to go help with the harvest, by and large. And in bigger cities like New York, they had the summer break because it was too damn hot. They didn't have air conditioning. Well, we're sort of past that era. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying let's do away with it, but we're going to find a lot of things. And you can see it with teachers, Jack. You know, it used to be that if a woman wanted to go to work, and my grandmom was a perfect example, she could have been an engineer, one of the most brilliant people I ever knew. But those types of jobs weren't offered to women back then. And so school districts really had the luxury of not paying very much, but had their doors open to a lot of talented women. Well, as you know, women can do anything now. And if we're going to attract individuals that we want in the classroom, we're going to have to treat them like professionals, the professionals that they are, and pay them more. And I think that can be accomplished along with taking greater advantage of technology.
You spoke before about the uninsured in Texas and the fact that the state has more people uninsured than any other state in the country. And a lot of Democrats have called for expanding Medicaid. Is that something you agree with? And if so, how would you get that passed in a Republican majority legislature that has opposed that?
Well, I don't know how much that has been driven by members of the legislature and how much that was driven by Greg Abbott's desire not to have those dollars. And it adds up to billions of dollars, and I think it was a real mistake, and especially rural legislators where hospitals are facing really tough time. I think they would be extremely open to that, and we also need to do a better job of opening up more neighborhood clinics, having that level of preventive care. Too many people are having to use an emergency room as their neighborhood physician, and it's way too expensive and just doesn't make any sense. And if we had more clinics, and if cities and counties aren't in a position to do that, I think the state needs to move in and help. It's a great level of care, and most of the neighborhood clinics that I'm familiar with have done an excellent job of providing that kind of preventive care.
You spoke on your website about the need for a balanced approach to immigration. What do you mean by that?
It can't be all based on deportation. We've seen the chaos that's causing in a lot of situations. Was the border too open? Absolutely. Did something need to be done about it? Sure. But it's settling down now. And let's look at that system too. The asylum system, I'm told, is very antiquated and doesn't work efficiently anymore. But I've always been in favor of and this is another area where technology is a huge help to us because it allows you to guard a much wider swath of the border and send messages down to the Border Patrol agents when they spot people crossing illegally. Obviously, you have to continue to have Border Patrol agents to do the work on the ground. But along with that, I've always championed a pathway to citizenship, and I don't see how we're going to get there without it. And I think after what we've seen the last year or so, a lot of people that may not have been in favor of that before are going to be in favor of it.
And are you in favor of the state continuing to spend billions of dollars every biennium to make sure that the border is secure?
Not by investing in the wall. I think that was very foolish and basically, in some respects, a waste of billions of dollars because it doesn't have the type of density that you would need to really, be a permanent guard. Too easy to get around. And so I want to be smart about it, and I also don't want to waste state money on projects that are really federal projects.
And you also say that you believe in reproductive freedom. So how does that work given the state's near total ban on abortions? And would you seek to change the law?
Well, there is one where I think you're really going to run into very strong opposition on the Republican side. I think the good news is, for those of us who do believe in reproductive freedom and are pro-choice, that you can't go a whole lot further than they've gone in Texas. But I would love to try to find some common ground where we can scale it back and make that type of care more available here in the state of Texas. And I think there have been opportunities in the past and to reach that kind of compromise, and both sides have been too strident. But that is something I would like to see. But I'm a realist, and I know that we're not just going to be able to go in and roll back all those laws.
We've seen a lot of deadly shootings. We saw the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of the Minnesota state senator and her husband, the assassination attempts on President Trump, just the deadly shootings that we've seen in Uvalde and the churches around the state. How do you prevent those?
It's so multifaceted because I think mental health is a big part of it. I think there are things that have been prevented, that such as background checks and those types of things, to make it more difficult for guns to get into the hands of the wrong people. I used not to be a big fan of placing any liability with the parents, but the more I've learned about that and how the parents are sometimes actively involved in the child building up his gun collection, those types of things really need to be looked at in a very close way. It's an extraordinarily difficult issue, though, because, and I live in a rural area now, I know there are attitudes about guns, but it's not so that they can go out and kill somebody, it's so they can protect their property. A lot of them like them because they can kill feral hogs in a very quick manner using an automatic weapon. And I understand that. But we've got to find some ways to make it more difficult to for wrongdoers to get guns in their hands, and that's not easy.
I was just going to ask you about that. Is the state doing a good enough job keeping guns out of the wrong people's hands?
Well, I don't think we have, obviously, given what we've seen. And you start talking in Texas about taking things away from folks, and I've never advocated for that. I had advocated for a buyback program at some time. I think when you start scaring people into think you're going to be raiding their homes and taking away a gun that they own, that just raises the hair on people's back. They don't want to hear that because that's a violation of their freedoms. And I understand that. And if we were going to do anything like that, I think it should be a buyback program. But I do think we should try anything we possibly can to try to get those guns off the street. Many people, many people would argue that you certainly don't need an AK-47 to go hunting, that kind of thing. But some people are using it for a legitimate use. And so you have to kind of listen to both sides and try to find some common ground. But we can't continue to just look the other way. And I hope that, when we go back and study education, look at it, how many of these things could be stopped, especially when the shooter is a young person, if we had better programs in place to try to spot that kind of behavior that might be indicative that someone was going to try something really awful.
Last question, and we talked a little bit about it before, but how do you think you're going to be able to beat Governor Abbott, who's certainly got a very large campaign war chest that he's built up, maybe $90, $100 million. It's very expensive, as you know, to run a statewide campaign in Texas.
Well, I don't think it costs $90 or $100 million. I find that to be a little bit laughable. Sure, you can spend it, but you know as well as anyone, most of that money is used to promote the candidate and to advertise the client and to pay for that advertising and promotion. That's not Greg Abbott's problem. People already know him, and that's his problem, because they do, and they obviously don't like the direction he's taking the state. And it's a lot easier to get people to vote against someone than to vote for someone. Obviously, I'm going to do everything I can to get people to vote for me, but I think I'll be just the kind of alternative and positive alternative that people are looking for right now.
Chris Bell, Democratic candidate for Texas governor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack.
We appreciate
you
it.
having me.